What if Michael Myers had never killed his sister Judith? As we know, the film's opening scene on Halloween night in 1963 shows 6-year-old Michael Myers walking into his sister's room. He stabbed her to death after she spent time with her boyfriend. Shortly after that, his parents find him outside with a knife in his hand. Michael was taken to Smith's Grove Sanitarium, where he became a patient of a psychiatrist named Dr. Samuel Loomis. He spent 15 years with Dr. Loomis, barely moving, never speaking a word. Eventually he broke out, made his way back to Haddonfield, Illinois, and the rest is history. But what if things played out a little differently that night? What if Michael failed to kill Judith? It was pretty obvious that something was seriously wrong with him, and it could have been possible that Judith noticed this earlier, during the day, or even before that. Knowing this would have made her very nervous, since she was the only one in the house with Michael. As Michael raised his knife, Judith reacted a lot more faster and stopped Michael from stabbing her. The timing was perfect as her parents made their way into the house. Judith would yell for help. Her parents, in shock, would then call the police and have Michael taken away. From there, he would be locked away at Smith's Grove. He was a danger to others and to himself. Dr. Loomis would realize this after trying to reach out to him for years. The child was a blank, emotionless slate to Loomis, never speaking, barely even moving. Sam recognized the deep-rooted trauma in the boy's psyche and knew that special treatment would be required if he were to ever help him. Even though he attempted to kill his sister, Judith still loved her brother. She would make attempts to visit Michael and ask him why he did what he did. There was no use. Michael was empty on the inside. There was nothing except evil. Dr. Loomis would advise her to keep her distance from Michael, since it could trigger him off and he could try to attack her again. Judith agreed and moved on with her life. A few years had passed. On October 30th, 1978, Michael, now 21 years old, escaped from Smith's Grove with one thing on his mind. He wanted to finish what he started. He was determined to find Judith and kill her. Since this would still take place during the timeline of the original film, Laurie Strode and her friends would be out of the picture since the focus is not on them, and the idea of Laurie being related to Michael was not thought of yet. Dr. Loomis was aware of the situation, and he knew that time was short. He needed to go after him before it was too late. Judith, now 31 years old, and married to a policeman named Derek in Haddonfield, were happy together. She now works as a teacher in Haddonfield High School. After she was done for the day, she went home to get changed so she can have dinner with her parents. They still lived in the same house and invited Judith to come over earlier that day. Not only was Judith affected by what happened that night, but so were her parents. Her husband, still on duty, came across Dr. Loomis. He then explained everything to him and the sheriff, who would have still been Lee Brackett. Brackett wasn't so convinced, but Derek seemed disturbed by this because he knew about Michael and how this affected Judith, and even worse, he knew where to find Judith on this day: home. Loomis knew this just as well as Derek did. This terrified Derek because Judith and Derek are expecting a child. A woman that is 4 months pregnant would be extremely vulnerable. He told Derek that Michael was no longer human. He was pure evil, waiting for the day to escape and finish what he started. They called his home. No answer, since Judith already left. They called the Myers house. No answer. Judith was unaware of this as she drove to her parents' house. As she walked up to the front door, she noticed that it was unlocked. She called out to her parents. No answer. She looked around, and there was nobody. She went upstairs to her parents' bedroom to find them both dead in their bed, Michael slaughtered them. She cried out in terror. She was in shock. Out of the shadows, a figure appeared. It was Michael, wearing a jumpsuit and a clown mask that somewhat resembled the one he wore when he was a child. He then charged after her as she ran into her old bedroom, back where it all began. Judith was terrified and couldn't do much since she was pregnant. She blocked the door and yelled for help. Michael punched a hole through the door and grabbed her hair. She struggled to get free. She was successful for a brief moment. Sirens were heard in the distance. Brackett, Loomis, and Derek arrived with other officers. The door was blocked off. Brackett and the other officers went to check the back door, but it was also blocked. As they hurried to break in, Derek and Loomis were able to get in through one of the windows on the side. Aware that the officers would break in any second now, Michael was able to get into the room. Judith pushed him away and tried to hit him with anything that she could find around her. He cut her arm when she tried fighting back. As he raised his knife, Derek shot Michael 3 times and he dropped to the floor. He kicked the knife away from him, and he checked on Judith to see if she was okay. Michael slowly sat back up, grabbed Derek, and threw him across the room, knocking him unconscious. Michael grabbed Judith by her throat and proceeded to strangle her. Dr. Loomis ran into the room, pulled out his revolver, and shot Michael 6 times out of the bedroom window, killing him instantly. The nightmare was over. The officers eventually made their way into the house and helped Derek and Judith. A few months went by. Judith and Derek went to visit her parents' grave. She still couldn't understand why. Why did her little brother kill her parents? Why did he attempt to kill her and her husband? She had to accept the fact that there was no way of explaining it. Michael Myers was the absence of good. He was pure evil. Thank you for listening. There will be more what-if scenarios coming soon. Be sure to subscribe, click on that notification bell. Follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and all that good stuff. And have yourselves a good fright.